All right, so get this. You wanted to know more about the psychology of obedience.
Yeah.
Like why people follow orders, even when it feels wrong. So we took a deep dive into some fascinating research by Stanley Milgram from way back in 1963.
Okay.
And let me tell you, what he found is still like sending shockwaves through the world of psychology even today.
It's really interesting how Milgram didn't just, sit around theorizing about obedience.
Right.
He actually designed this whole experiment.
Oh, wow.
To like put it to the test,
I see.
And the way he set the whole thing up, it was ingenious.
Yeah.
It really tacked into all the complexities of human behavior.
So I'm all ears. Let's unpack this.
Okay, so Milgram, he created this scenario, and it seemed like, on the surface, just a simple memory test.
Okay.
There were two participants, a teacher and a learner.
Oh.
The teacher was the actual participant, and the learner was an actor.
I see.
Like on the whole experiment.
Okay, so a little bit of deception right from the start.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where's this going?
So the teacher was told that they had to give electric shocks to the learner
Wait.
for every wrong answer.
What on?
And these weren't just like little zaps either. The shock generated, it had all these switches, right?
Yeah.
Ranging from like slight shock all the way to danger, severe shock.
Hold on, electric shocks? That seems pretty intense for a memory experiment.
Well, here's the thing. The shocks weren't real, but the teacher, they totally believed they were.
Oh, okay.
Milgram went to a lot of trouble
Okay.
to make the experiment believable.
Yeah.
He even had the teacher like experience a little sample shock.
Really?
Just to make it all, more convincing.
Wow. That's pretty clever.
Yeah.
But I'm sensing this is heading into some ethically tricky territory.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah.
By today's standards, this experiment would raise like all sorts of red flags. Sure. But, back then, the ethical guidelines for research
Yeah.
were, a lot different.
I see.
The whole point is, Milgram really wanted to understand how far people would go, right? When an authority figure told them to do something
Right.
that maybe clashed with their conscience.
So you've got this unsuspecting teacher.
Right.
They're thinking they're delivering real shocks.
Yeah.
And you've got an authority figure, the experimenter, urging them on to continue. What did Milgram expect would happen?
So before the experiment, Milgram did this survey.
Okay.
He asked this group of Yale psychology students to predict how many participants would obey all the way
To the highest.
to the highest shock level.
Yeah. What did they say?
Right.
I'm guessing they figured most people would be like, nope, I'm not doing that.
They estimated only like a tiny, tiny fraction.
Real?
Maybe 1% would actually go all the way.
Wow.
Because after all, these were just ordinary people, not, monsters or anything.
Right.
But then
Yeah.
Milgram actually ran the experiment. And
what happened?
the results were absolutely mind-blowing.
Okay.
A full 65% of the participants
Whoa.
obeyed the experimenter's commands all the way to the end,
Wow.
administering what they believed was
Yeah.
a potentially lethal 450-volt shock.
Wait, 65%?
65%.
That's a lot more than anyone predicted.
It is.
So basically 2/3 of the people they were willing to potentially harm somebody just because a scientist in a lab coat told them to.
Pretty much.
Wow, that is unsettling.
It is. And this wasn't just like, detached flicking of switches.
Okay.
Many of the participants, they showed visible signs of stress.
Oh, really?
Like they were sweating, trembling. Some of them even had nervous laughter.
Wow.
Some of them even pleaded with the experimenter.
Like, stop this.
Yeah, let's stop this.
Wow.
But in the end, they kept going.
That's just incredible.
It is.
What explains this? Like blind obedience.
Right.
Why would so many people just go against what I would assume would be like their basic moral instinct?
Right.
Not to hurt another person.
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what makes Milgram's experiment so fascinating and so disturbing.
For sure.
To really understand this blind obedience, we need to dig into the psychological factors at play.
Okay, so what were these factors?
Yeah.
What led these everyday people down such a, troubling path?
Exactly. So Milgram, he like identified these key elements.
Okay.
That kind of created this like perfect storm for obedience in this experiment.
Okay.
First, the setting itself.
Oh, okay.
Like it played a role, you know.
Okay.
The experiment was done at Yale University.
Oh, right.
You know, like a super prestigious institution.
So the authority of the setting,
exactly,
that like Ivy League backdrop, that added legitimacy to the whole thing.
Totally.
So people were more likely to trust what was happening,
right,
because of where it was happening.
It's subtle, but it's really powerful.
I see.
Our brains, they kind of just like associate these prestigious institutions with knowledge and trustworthiness.
Right.
And this can make us, you know, more susceptible to believing people who represent those institutions.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like if a doctor in a white coat told you to do something, you'd probably be more inclined to do it than if some random person on the street told you the same thing.
It's the same idea.
Yeah.
And Milgram, he was really intentional about this.
Like using that?
Yeah, leveraging that whole effect.
Oh, wow.
So beyond the setting, he also like framed the experiment in this way.
Okay.
That like tapped into people's sense of purpose.
Oh, how so?
The participants were told that they were contributing to like a scientific study on learning and memory.
So it gave their actions like a sense of importance.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just about obeying the experimenter.
Right.
It was about, you know, advancing science.
That's it, precisely.
Wow.
And this, you know, contributing to a worthy goal, that made it harder for them to say no.
Yeah.
Even when they were, you know, feeling uncomfortable.
They were caught up in that, right?
Totally.
They felt like they were part of something bigger.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these different factors, like, they layered on top of each other.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just one thing.
No.
It was the setting, the importance of the task. Like, what else?
Another thing was the gradual escalation of the shocks.
Oh, okay.
Like, the voltage, it increased.
Yeah.
Little by little with every wrong answer.
So they weren't asked to go straight to the highest shock.
No.
Or no way.
It started small.
Okay.
And it gradually increased. And this is like a subtle, but super effective psychological trick.
Oh, okay.
By starting with small, like harmless requests, and then slowly increasing them.
Yeah.
Milgram was able to create like the slippery slope of obedience.
Oh, I see. So by the time they got to those higher levels, they'd already committed to the whole thing. And it became like harder to stop.
Exactly.
They like trapped themselves. Each small step justified the next one.
Yeah, like, well, I've already done 150 volts. What's another 15?
Exactly.
And this whole approach made it so much easier to rationalize just continuing.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And frightening at the same time. It makes you think, like, how do we even recognize this in our own lives?
Right.
These subtle forms of influence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Understanding how this experiment worked, it can help us be more aware of similar things in our everyday lives.
So it's not just about the electric shocks.
Right.
It's about understanding authority.
Exactly.
In general.
Exactly.
Like, think about the workplace.
Right.
Your boss asks you to do something you're maybe not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Maybe it bends the rules. Maybe it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
Do you speak up?
Right.
Or do you just go along with it?
Exactly.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Knowing about this experiment, knowing about the power of authority, those incremental steps might make me more likely to, like, pause and think about this.
Exactly. It's all about cultivating that healthy skepticism, that willingness to question things.
Yeah.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because obedience isn't always a bad thing.
Right.
We need some of it.
Yeah.
For society to even work.
Right. Imagine a world with no traffic laws. Or where everyone just did whatever they wanted.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Total chaos.
Yeah, for sure.
Obedience, it helps us maintain order, structure, safety.
Yeah.
The problem is when it's blind obedience.
Right.
When we follow orders without even thinking.
Without questioning.
Without questioning.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this so important.
So how do we find that balance then?
Right.
How do we know when to obey and when to question? When is it like healthy respect for authority? And when is it that like slippery slope?
That slippery slope.
Yeah.
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer.
Right.
It's not like a set of rules.
Yeah.
Like do this, don't do that.
Right.
It really requires careful thought, moral judgment, and often a lot of courage.
So no easy answers.
Yeah.
But are there like guidelines we can think about, things to keep in mind when we're in those tricky situations where obedience is expected?
Yeah.
But it might not feel right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Milgram's work and research by other psychologists has given us some really valuable insights into, the factors that influence this.
Okay.
And understanding these factors can help us make better decisions about when to comply and when to resist.
All right, I'm ready to dive into those factors.
Okay.
What should we be looking out for? So we've talked about how blind obedience can be a bad thing.
Right.
But that some level of obedience is actually necessary for society to work.
Exactly.
So how do we know where to draw that line?
Yeah. How do we
walk that tightrope?
Where's the sweet spot?
Yeah.
Well, one thing to consider is what's called legitimate authority.
Oh, okay.
So not all authority figures are equal, right? Some, they earn our respect through their expertise, their experience, their moral standing, while others, they just rely on their power.
So it's like, we trust a doctor's medical advice more than some random person giving health tips.
That doctor has earned it.
Yeah, they've put in the work.
Yeah, through their knowledge and their training.
Exactly.
Legitimate authority. It often comes from a place of knowledge, experience, and shared values.
Okay, so we obey those who've earned it.
Yeah.
Not just been given it.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's, legitimate authority.
Yeah.
What else should we be thinking about?
It's also really important to think about the intention behind the command.
Okay, why are they asking me to do this?
Exactly. Are they acting in good faith? Or are their motives kind of,
suspect?
Little suspect.
Yeah.
Is this about, the greater good?
Yeah.
Achieving a shared goal? Or is it about, personal gain, control?
Right.
Or even malice?
So it's not just who's giving the order.
No.
But why they're giving it.
Exactly.
Got it.
We should also ask ourselves about the consequences.
Okay.
What's going to happen if we obey?
Yeah.
What could happen if we don't obey?
Right.
Who could be affected?
Yeah.
And how?
So it's like a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, kind of.
One that takes into account, ethics and human well-being.
Exactly.
Not just, money.
It's about weighing the potential harms and benefits.
Right.
Both immediate and long-term.
Right.
And sometimes the most ethical thing to do is to disobey.
Even if there are risks.
Even if it's risky.
Like whistleblowers. They expose corruption.
Right.
Even if it might cost them their job.
They do.
Their reputation.
Their actions often highlight these situations where blind obedience would have been really bad.
For everyone.
For other people.
Yeah.
For an organization.
Yeah.
Even for society as a whole.
Right. Their willingness to disobey.
Yeah.
To speak truth to power is a powerful example.
It is.
For all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're reminding us that we have a choice.
We always have a choice.
We don't have to just blindly follow orders.
Right.
Especially when our gut is telling us.
Yeah. When something's
not right.
Feels wrong.
Yeah.
That's such an important point.
It is. It's really striking me that this experiment, it's not just about shocks and obedience.
Right.
It's really about...
It's about human nature.
Human nature.
Yeah.
It's about good and evil. The pressures we face.
Yeah.
And the choices we make.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Milgram's work, it really shows us some unsettling things about human behavior.
For sure.
But it also highlights our capacity for critical thinking.
Yeah.
Moral courage, standing up for what we believe in.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Milgram's world, what's the takeaway message?
I would say obedience is a powerful force.
It is.
And it can be used for good and bad. The key is to be aware of the potential for undue influence, to hone our critical thinking skills, to cultivate a strong moral compass, and to have the courage to question and even resist when our values are at stake.
Well said.
Yeah.
And remember, everyone, this conversation doesn't end here.
No.
Keep thinking critically.
Keep questioning
the world.
Keep learning.
Keep learning.
And keep trying to align your actions with your values.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Keep diving deep all